look, let's talk about football. The transfer window closes in a few hours' time. It's been a busy few months. Got some amazing stories unfolding from Alexander Isak and Johan Visser to Eberici Eze agreeing terms with Spurs before joining Arsenal. We've seen big money transfers, haven't we? Victor Gyökeres going to Arsenal, yep. Florian Wirtz joining Liverpool. Record-breaking spending, over £2.6 billion being exchanged over the past few months. It's been a transfer window for the ages, if you like. Have you got a favourite transfer so far, Coisty?
Oh, favourite transfer. Ekitike I've enjoyed, by the way, Jeff. I've got to say it, Liverpool. I know he never got a mention there. Florian Wirtz got a mention. Who else? I mean, Sunderland have started pretty well.
Oh.
So, you know what I mean? Yeah, I think they'd come into the equation, wouldn't they?
They would. Well,
Granit Xhaka.
Granit Xhaka, the ball he played in for the Isidore header to win the game. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I would say he's probably caught the eye as much as anybody, to tell you the truth.
Oh, fantastic. And Sunderland have caught the eye as well. David texted, he said, Jeff, don't forget, Sunderland are back with a bang. Top dogs in the Northeast. Mind the gap, he said, with a smile. Yeah, enjoy it, David. Enjoy it. Now, Ali, I want to get your thoughts on the transfer window shutting on the back of the third round of Premier League fixtures. There's a lot of calls, aren't they, for the transfer window to be closed before a ball is kicked. What do you think?
I think that's it. I think that's fair. I don't understand, and maybe you can tell me, enlighten me a little bit. Who was it came up with the date rather, that it closes at, in the back of the third round of Premier League fixtures? I think it would make more sense before the first fixture, to tell you the truth, Jeff. I can't really understand why there has to be a reason for it. What it is, I don't know. Maybe you know, but I just think it would make far more sense that before the first ball's kicked. To be honest with you, mate.
Yeah, I know the Premier League considered it again during the course of this year. And it has happened in the past. I think the issue, Coisty, might be if we stop buying and selling the day before our Premier League season starts.
Yeah.
But Europe doesn't. It leaves British teams at a distinct disadvantage compared to European sides.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. But I'm thinking to myself, are you talking about from the angle that British sides could be under pressure still to sell their top players if there was a European window open? Or are we saying the window closes, therefore you can't buy or sell? Do you know what I mean, Jeff?
Yeah.
I think that would be fairer. Does it make you weaker? I'm not so sure. I don't think it makes you weaker if you can't sell. I get the part about not being able to buy and other teams being able to buy. But if you've got your squad 2 or 3 weeks earlier than most, I know. I just think it should be perhaps a rule across UEFA, perhaps. You know what I mean? But that would be probably very difficult to enforce, I would imagine. But it just doesn't make. I don't think it makes real sense, Jeff. The third game theory. Do you know what I mean? Is there a possibility or an option or a case to be made, Jeff, to do away with the window altogether? Would that suit anybody, do you think?
It's something, Ali, I've always advocated. When transfer windows were introduced, I think one of the reasons was that there was, year-long speculation about who might be going where and how unsettling that would be for players and for clubs. So transfer windows were introduced. And what do we have now? We have year-long speculation about who might be going where. So to me, it doesn't seem to work. And, I look at managers in the Premier League now, for example, who had that window closed before a ball was kicked, would now be looking at their squads and thinking, crikey, we're in trouble.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, it's definitely. And you're right to mention Villa, and you're also right to mention not in trouble of relegation or that, but, to maintain the standards that Unai Emery's set in terms of the club, where they're being and where they're moving forward and things like that. That would be a concern, absolutely. It's a funny one, and it's strange. And I'm listening to Olivia there, and I get it as well. I'm even a wee bit bored of the Isak situation, Jeff, and I bet you are too, to a certain degree. You know, I mean, and I just think the transfer window, of course, listen, from our point of view, gives us plenty of talking points. I get that, and it gives us hours and hours and hours of chat. But at the same time, if possible, I would, and there was an option, I would have my squad ready and everybody's squad ready for the opening game of the season.
I think one of the other issues is, though, these days, you know, this summer we had the Club World Cup. We also had internationals. We also have a lot of pre-season tours. With so much going on in the summer, there is so little time, you know, to get your ducks in a row, if you like.
Yeah, well, I think, to be fair, Liverpool did well, didn't they?
They did.
Liverpool have been a perfect example of how to do it, really. You know, regardless of Isak's situation, you know, you look at the player, whether it's Kerkez and, you know, Ekitike and players like that, and Wirtz, and they went out and got their business done very, very early and very impressively. So who were the best team in the country by a distance last year, if they can go out and do it, then, you know, you can make a case that other teams, other coaches, other managers will be doing the same.
There's a message here actually from Martin in Lim, who tells me that a few years back, the Premier League, it was 2018, 2019, the Premier League experimented with closing the window before the season started so teams wouldn't be unsettled once matches kicked off. Problem was, no other major European leagues followed suit. So while English clubs had to stop buying, clubs in Spain, Italy, France, Germany, etc., could still swoop in and buy their players, putting Premier League teams at a disadvantage, it was pretty much what you were saying, really.
Yeah.
Thank you, Martin. The issue, in some respects, though, is as a fan, the first few weeks of the Premier League, they're like a phony war almost, aren't they? Because you know, you might get a hint of how strong a side is going to be, but you don't know until after the Premier and after the transfer window is closed 3 games in.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's true. But then that gets back to the next question, Jeff. Why did you come up with 3? Would you make it 5? Would you just do away with it and let people buy whenever they wanted to? You know, because I don't know. I suppose there would be an argument saying, you know, it prohibits their freedom to go and express themselves into the transfer market. You know, I know there are the rules and regulations, but why should you only be allowed to buy players at a certain time? That's another argument that some coaches would have, I would imagine, Jeff. But as I say, if they're going to have, it would make sense to me just the start of the season, and you wouldn't be able to buy or sell players.
Yeah, so, and we talk about alignment of the European leagues, and it's a disadvantage. Obviously, we're talking about Premier League clubs principally. Yeah. You know, a lot of EFL clubs, you know, that's not the case.
No.
But I wonder if there's any reason why Europe shouldn't align with, let's say, a transfer window between the 1st of June and the 31st of July. I can't think of a logical reason.
Oh, it makes sense, wouldn't it? Well, I'm with you, mate. It would make sense. Just bring everybody in line at the same time. Why would you not? I mean, it would make total sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the other issue would be, you know, if the transfer window was closed before the start of the season, teams with bomb squads, like Manchester United, for example, my word, they would have to get a shuttle on, wouldn't they, to get rid of those players who are in that bomb squad?
Yeah, but does it make that much difference to them? I don't know. I mean, there is I get the train of thought that some clubs wouldn't take players early in the window because it would mean paying them probably for a month when they're not using their services. So I understand that side of it as well, Jeff. But at the same time, if we're complimenting Liverpool and doing their business early in the transfer window, which they have done and done it very, very well, at the same time, you know, transfer business works both ways, and that's getting players out. So you would just be under a little bit more pressure to get players out early as well.
Yeah. But whichever the dates are, to be brutally honest, you get certain clubs in situations. Well, I'll give an example of Crystal Palace. They've lost Eze in the last few days. They might be losing Gahey on deadline day. If you're Oliver Glasner, if you're Steve Parish, what sort of situation does that leave you in with the clock ticking? You must be so tempted to bring in replacements, purely in terms of numbers, but not, perhaps not the quality that you really want.
Well, they know this. The only thing I would say is, Jeff, they know the situation that they're in. First thing I've got to say, and I know you'll agree with me, what about Gay's finish at the weekend? What about that goal he scored at the weekend? Now, getting back to Palace, it would be a savage blow to them if they lost those two players, like 24 hours or 12 hours before the window closed, whatever it may be. But it's still their choice. And I know you and I are in agreement. If an offer come in, ridiculous offer for Gay, they've got to accept it. Last year of the contract, I get that. But it is still their choice because he has got a year of his contract to go. Now, we can argue about the pros and cons of perhaps the mistake or the error of letting the contract go away down to this time limit left. But the choice is still Crystal Palace's at this moment in time because the player is under contract. So they know that situation, and if they know there's a fair chance they're going to get an offer in which they have to accept, then they should have made plans to bring somebody in before now.
Yeah, I get that, and I accept that they should have sorted the contract situation out earlier. But I would argue, Coisty, that if Liverpool are coming along paying 35 to 40 million pounds for Mark Gahey, there is no choice for Palace because it makes no sense at all to say, okay, we'll sacrifice 40 million pounds for one season, one season of Mark Gahey. They cannot possibly go down that line.
No, I'm with you. I totally, it makes absolute sense. The only argument would be, and it won't happen, obviously, the only argument would be against that, Jeff, would be, right, we've got to take this 40 million. However, do we put ourselves under serious pressure here of relegation and then you actually lose the money? See, there would be a wee argument thinking, okay, it's going to cost us 40 million, but he's going to keep us in the division. Now, you and I both know that they'll stay in the division anyway, we would think. But is there that little bit of a gamble that they'd be willing to take with that 40 million?
If you watched them last night, there's no gamble because Palace, they are not going down. They are not going, they are so well organised, brilliantly coached by Oliver Glasner, and they have some blooming good players as well.
talkSPORT Breakfast, waking you up Monday to Friday morning from 6 a.m. on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.